Good evening, fellow thinkers and drinkers, and welcome to another Deep Purple episode. Finishing off, actually, discussed, as we have, the lineups, incarnations, marks, and recorded output from Mark 1 to Mark 5. There just remains to look at 6, 7, 8, and 9. So, with that in mind, I hope you're sitting comfortably. Blackmore left, as we know, at the end of the European leg over the Battle Rated on Tour, November 17th, 1993. A slight problem, in as much as they had 5 sold-out dates in Japan to play. Informed by the Japanese promoter that a replacement would be acceptable, however, he better be a big name. As we all know, Joe Satriani eventually stepped into the breach. They played their 5 shows to great success. And so much did they enjoy it, and obviously playing together, that Satriani stayed with them long enough to do a European tour the next year. He didn't stay, as we know, and probably that's a good thing. In hindsight, I don't think, in my personal opinion at least, not the right man for the job. Perhaps too big a name. Probably we would not have had the length of rest of their career that we've enjoyed had he joined, and even if we did, I think it would have been much more intermittent. So very committed as Satriani is to his solo career. Alright, enough of the history. Steve Morse eventually was selected, and I have to be honest, I knew absolutely nothing about Steve Morse. The first I heard Steve Morse play was the first time I played Purpendicular. Obviously, we all know his background now, his credentials. We don't need to go into that particularly. He certainly doesn't need his reputation enhancing. Things have changed, obviously, and yeah, a lot of people will at the time did complain that it doesn't sound like anything it did under Blackmore or with Blackmore. Yeah. It sort of reminds me of conversations I've had with people who've come to live in different countries and complain because it is not the same as whence they came. So, well, sort of the point, isn't it? But never mind. Morse's influences were completely different, obviously, to Blackmore. Which is one of the reasons they went for him. They could have gone for a rock metal guitarist. They could have gone for a Blackmore clone, for want of a better expression. They didn't, and I think that was a very good decision. It was a brave decision, but I think ultimately the correct decision. Now, as I said when I was dismissing Out of Hand, Come Taste the Band, I said a lot of it was down to the fact that it was heavily influenced by an American rock guitarist who did not suit the band at all. So now we have another American guitarist. Why did this one work? Why did it work on this occasion? I don't know. It just did. Some of these things are not to be rationalized. There is no logical explanation, perhaps. I think a few things did play a role. I think Morse is a much more versatile exponent of the instrument than perhaps even Blackmore. Technically, he's second to none. So what he doesn't know about guitars, I'm sure is not worth knowing. But I think they were very lucky in as much as they got somebody with such rare talent, but also somebody with their feet firmly placed on the ground. Not a huge ego here. I think he brought himself to the band and did his best to adapt and to fit in, and they all got on well musically and personally. Maybe that wouldn't have been the case with a bigger name, Satriani. Whoever, I don't know. Counterfactuals, it never happened. But the chemistry was there, both musically and personally. And Deep Purple got a second wind. I don't know how else you would describe it. 28 years into their career when Purpendicular came out. Not many bands after that length of time were producing anything this good. Very few, in fact. Okay, so what did we get? Well, we got lots of things. The first thing I have to say is that this album marks something of a renaissance in John Lord. He'd been very quiet since the reunion. Well, to be honest, he wasn't that particularly proactive in Whitesnake either, was it? But whether that was down to him or not, I guess we'll never know. But his ideas, you can hear you can feel his influence, as much as Morse, as much as Glover, on Purpendicular. It was fresh. I remember very clearly the first time I played this. It was, for what, okay, I didn't know what to expect, and I certainly was not expecting what I got, but I was pleasantly surprised. There's such a variety of styles on it, but they're all good songs. Yes, nothing like that would have occurred had Blackmore stayed in the band. But he didn't. He fucked off. They didn't kick him out. They went for they went for somebody different, somebody new, and they said, okay, this is who we are now. This is our music. What can I say? Is it an album full of classics? Almost. Anything I don't like on it? Not really. Loosen My Strings is one of the finest songs they've ever composed. Sometimes I feel like Screaming is a Deep Purple classic. It's up there with your Child in Times, with your Smoke on the Waters, your Highway Stars, your Woman from Tokyo, your Perfect Strangers. It's a great song. An absolutely wonderful song. Cascades, not much worse, is it? You know, there's some really inventive stuff on here. You can almost feel the enjoyment they had writing and recording this. Well, you know, if they had a rule book, somebody just kindly opened the window and it was defenestrated. And they closed the window behind them and said, we're going to do what we're going to do. And we'll live by the results or not. Wonderful album, absolutely wonderful. As I said, it was just so joyous to listen to. It was obvious they're going to be okay. They're going to survive. And not only that, they are still capable of making music of this quality. Not resting on their laurels. This is not a repetition of what's gone before. This is very much of its time, is not the right expression, but it's very much of those people at that time. This is now Deep Purple. Great, wonderful. They carried on, obviously relentless touring, nothing changes there. In fact, even more so. But I will not discuss that too much detail because at some point I would like to make a video where I discuss their not so much their live performances, much as the construction of their set lists from, you know, effectively from day one up until the present day. I think that is an well, at least it's a potentially interesting conversation. So a couple of years later, they record the inevitable follow-up, don't they? Superb. Couple of things I have to say about this. This was not recorded in the same spirit, I don't think. Or the spirit of freedom, or the spirit of discovery. Honeymoon was over. Time to wash, get used to washing the dishes and taking out the trash. But there are a couple of things that influenced what came to be Abandon. One was Lord's increasing, I won't say disinterest or lack of interest, but he was distracted. Around this time he was busy writing what would be released the same year as Pictured Within. A wonderful album, but miles away from Deep Purple. And also they made a decision that they're going to make a heavier album, a more focused album. So we're in the beginning in 1970, they came out with the Direct in Rock and then followed it up with the Experimental Fireball. Here they've flipped it around. We had Purpendicular and now we're going into Abandon. I don't know if that was a good idea. Steve Morse is not a metal guitarist. He can write a great riff, but it's the spectrum of his ability, of his ideas, of his, what he can bring to the band. I think trying to tunnel him down here was perhaps not the smartest move. All obviously, in hindsight, we're all incredibly insightful. And with Lord being maybe not that involved, it must have changed the writing dynamic, vis-a-vis Perpendicular. But ultimately, Abandon came out a couple of years later. I distinctly remember buying it. I distinctly remember putting it on in the car driving home. And when it finished, I said, all right, okay, I'll put it on again. Obviously, I was distracted. No, I didn't get it. I still didn't get it. Obviously, Fingers to the Bone was a great song. That stood out. The rest of it was just one discordant noise. Occasionally a little faster, occasionally a little slower. It sounded like one homogeneous song. And that, even today, I think is one of its problems. If you take any of those songs out of there, listen to them individually, you will appreciate them a hell of a lot more. There is something about, I don't know, the way it's recorded, the sound, the arrangements, the tempos. There's something, when you listen to that album from start to finish, it's hard work and it's not necessarily pleasurable. However, there is really good stuff on there. Seventh Heaven is another classic. Fingers to the Bone, I've already mentioned. I'll Go Out to Bat for Evil Louis. Always like that. It's odd, but I've always liked it. They re-recorded Bloodsucker from In Rock. Not a good idea. It was not a good idea. And not a particularly convincing rendition, to be honest. They said at the time, if I recall correctly, that a lot of this stuff was made so they could refresh the live set, which they'd already done to a considerable extent. But again, once we get around to that other discussion, we will soon see that very few of these songs survive very long in the live set at all. So take that with the proverbial pinch of salt. It's very strong. It took me many years to fully appreciate it. And now I can listen to it from start to finish. My ears have become attuned to the differences between the songs. And I can identify them. But it took a long time to get to that. There is just something about it. There's a sameness if you're not familiar with it. And obviously it did not come up to Perpendicular, did it? I mean, the variety was lacking. Then there wasn't that obvious hit's the wrong word. There wasn't that obvious classic. There wasn't your obvious Ted the Mechanic or Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming or something like that. It requires more perseverance. For those who did persevere, I think it's now a very rewarding experience. And when I come to do the ranking, I think that will be reflected. Not the best thing they ever did, but by no means the worst. All right, so off they go on tour again. 1999, remembering that Abandon came out in 98. In September 1999 was the 30th anniversary of the Concerto for Group and Orchestra. I think looking back, this is when John should have left. The 30th anniversary show was a great celebration of, well, everything about Deep Purple. And I think that would have been a fitting farewell and the most appropriate valedictory moment for him. He was already, I'm sure, tiring. I think the constant touring, I seem to recall him saying at some point when he did eventually leave that, if Deep Purple were doing 50 or 60 shows a year, he wouldn't have left. But that's not how it was working. I suspect that what happened after the concerto was done as a compromise, and we all know compromises. Nobody's happy. They went out on another extended bout of touring, which took the next couple of years, on this concerto tour, where they did their own set. They had Ronnie D out as a guest. They played the entire concerto. To be honest with you, it was, I don't want to say pantomime, but yeah, really. And I think even John got sick of it at some point, because a lot, especially when they got away to South America and other places, a lot of the crowds weren't expecting what they got, and were perhaps not that. If you're unprepared for the concerto, like it's 40 minutes is a long time when you're waiting for Highway Star or Smoke on the Water to appear. And I think some of the crowds were a bit rowdy. That obviously wasn't great. But the point I'm getting at is that they farted around. I think probably trying to keep John engaged. But neither party had, he didn't have the courage is the wrong word, but he hadn't convinced himself to leave, and they couldn't, quite understandably, ask him to leave. So they were in limbo for a while, and all those precious wasted years, who will pay? Well, ultimately we did. They should have had at least one album out in that intervening time. They lost momentum. They really did. Nobody's saying that Purpendicular and Abandon set the world on fire sales-wise. That's not the point. But they were building up, and they lost momentum. And I think from that point they became very close. They came very close to being a touring act only. Okay, John eventually went 2002. I'll talk more about that when we do the live stuff. And was replaced by Don Airey, who at the time was both an obvious choice and a strange choice. Obvious for obvious reasons, but printing out Don Airey's CV and his discography could be considered as a minor act of deforestation. The amount of paper it would take up. He's never really hung around with anybody. A couple of years at the most. So there was always in the back of one's mind at the time, oh, really? No doubts about him or his ability, but, okay. I guess we'll just have to see. Oh, okay, here we are 23 years later, he's still there, so fair enough. I at least was wrong. They eventually went back to the studio. I mean, which I'm glad they did. I think had they not done it at that point, then we may well have never heard from them again in terms of new material. But Roger Glover, who'd been producing the album since the reunion, decided that he was no longer objective enough, and they wanted an outside producer. Not for any technical reasons. I mean, Roger is so experienced by this point. But you can understand it. They wanted an outside, a disinterested party, if you like, saying, "No, that's shit. No, okay, you could do better there, guys." Which maybe is difficult if you're a member of the band as well. Although I'm sure, they'd all known each other a lot along by now. But anyway, why they did it, I suppose, is not the point. They did. They hired Michael Bradford, of whom I know nothing, and today no less, apart from the fact he produced two Deep Purple albums. The resulting Bananas, I must say, from a production point of view, I did not like it. It was Bring Back Roger, All Is Forgiven, was the cry around the bar when that got released. There was something very processed, very artificial about the sound of the record. In terms of the music, of course, John Lord was asked what he thought of it, since it's the first album, Deep Purple album, after he departed. And diplomatic as he always was, he said he was slightly surprised because they'd obviously been working on ideas over the years, but a couple of them, because he does have a couple of writing credits, but only a couple of them actually made it to the finished product, which I suppose is not that surprising. Having recruited a new band member, it's probably a good, not a bad idea at this point to start, rewriting, original material, as it were, including contributions from the new band member. Never judge a book by its cover. I do believe in this maxim. Otherwise, I would never have bought this. You all know what I'm talking about. You'll be looking at it. I don't know. What were they thinking about? I mean, a strange title as well, but I mean, really. There is good stuff on this record. There really is. Pictures of Innocence is a really good song. I Got Your Number sounded better live before they recorded it. They debuted it on a 2002 tour when they were still calling it Up the Wall. It seemed to be better then. I don't like the phrase "I got your number" either. It's too cliched for Deep Purple. And for some reason, I don't know. It's okay. There are things here I generally don't think are that good, and I would say House of Pain is a weak opener. I hate cowbells. Razzle Dazzle, I never understood what they were thinking. What were they thinking? And Ian Gillan loves it, so, well, you know. What do you say? Vive la différence. Walk On is it's an average blues song. It's not great. Never a Word is. That's more back to the Purpendicular spirit. That's a lovely little song. The title track as well. Really weird time signature, so they tell me. But it's a really good driving song. Doing it tonight, also one of those things when you first listen to it, it's a bit predictable. We've been here before, but somehow it's just fun actually. Okay, terribly cheesy lyric, but there's nothing wrong with cheese. I like cheese. I spend a lot of time in France. I love cheese, but this is a cheesy lyric. I just don't think. Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. But what was the other one? Sun Goes Down was a good song. Yeah, that was that one they never played live. Unfortunately, we did get Silver Tongue, but wasn't that great. Wasn't that great. So yeah, wasn't the greatest start, I have to say. There was around the time of Purpendicular, there was a really great feeling of optimism that, this is just the start. This is Deep Purple, isn't it? They've got, sometimes they find ways of creating difficulties where none exist, and by the same token, where they have real difficulties, real genuine difficulties, they seem very good at overcoming them. Recalcitrant guitar players and things of that nature, and departing band members, but no, all right. Fortunately, they didn't wait too long. It was a couple of years before they went back into the studio, again with Michael Bradford. This is a much more rushed effort. Is the production better? It's different. It's it's not quite as processed sounding, I don't think. Difficult to say. I mean, this is sometimes listening to this. It's either a really great record or it isn't. The title song's a classic. It's another one of those, Morse era songs that go alongside Your Child in Time, Your Smoke on the Waters, Highway Stars, Your Lazies, everything. Yeah, it's just a great song. As is the much overlooked Before Time Began, which was the prog coming out in them, which was starting to come out, had started to manifest itself, I think, even on Bananas, and can't be too much of a coincidence to say that this started when Don Airey joined the band. But it's clearly quite absurd. Yes, it's another great song. Couple of them are a bit throwaway. Back to Back and Don't Look Now, do we really need them? But one of the best ones was not even the Japanese bonus track. Things I Never Said. It's just so much fun, but such a great song. Simple, catchy, great live, which they realized because they played it live for years. But that wasn't even the Japanese bonus track, and it's a lot better than those. Don't Look Back and Don't Look Now, Back to Back, and even Girls Like That's not that great. What else is there? Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye it's another good song. I always think this is an improvement. I really do. I think this was an improvement. on Bananas. It had more focus, I think, more direct. The songs were generally at least stronger than on Bananas, which was a bit, it's a bit under par. Well, we then have an 8-year drought. The reasons for this I will not go into. I mean, there's been various attempted explanations. People was, what's the point in recording albums? Nobody buys them. So, sorry guys, you don't need the money. Every time you hear an interview, no, we're not a nostalgia act. We're a vibrant, current, happening thing. If you're going to be a vibrant, current, happening thing, you need to be releasing new music. And these 8 years, again, what have we missed? Probably 2 albums worth of material, easily. But eventually, they did. And they started working with Bob Ezrin as a producer, with whom they continue to work to this day. And this is marked a profound change of fortune, I think, for them. Well, everything they've recorded, all original material they've recorded, I think is at least as good as Purpendicular, is better than, I won't spoil that. It's taken to a whole new level. It really did. The first one was Now What in 2013. And it's one of those, this is more Purpendicular. This has the variety again, the variety of styles. It just sounds really well. Bob Ezrin can produce a record. And he seems to have had a good influence on them. He seems to have been the one that had a feeling for the band and their music. And he could say, no, don't do that. No. Well, the results speak for themselves. But from a simple song all the way through to Vincent Price, and what a great song that is. There is not a wasted second here. I'm not going to review them all. Obviously, dedicating the album to John, who passed in 2012. Especially some of the lyrics in Above and Beyond and Uncommon Man. It's a nice heartfelt tribute. But this is just a classic record from start to finish. If we look at it in terms of their catalogue, it's a classic record. If we look at it from what was going out in rock music around that time, I'm assuming it's a classic record. I can't imagine there's too much out there that's better than this. Certainly not from any legacy act. There are a few legacy acts, Saxon, Uriah Heep, producing really good music, but not as good as this. This was an amazing achievement. And they didn't waste the opportunity. A couple of years later we got Infinite, or Infinite as Gillan insists on calling it. It's not as good. It's almost the abandon to Normal What's Purpendicular. It has, although it's not as monotone, for want of a better word, as Abandon was. There's still a lot of variety on here. And the 2 best songs are perhaps the 2 most creative and 2 most inventive, being Birds of Prey and The Surprising. 2 wonderful pieces of music. This version of Deep Purple has developed its own voice very quickly. They're incorporating great chunks of progressive rock into this, but they're still rocking. They've carved out a unique niche for themselves here. This is excellent stuff. Time for Bedlam's a great opener. Another caustic lyric from Gillan. All I Gotta You is another great song. A lot of fun. Get Me Out of Here. On Top of the World. Yeah, I don't dislike them. Nothing on here is bad, but it's not as consistently 10 out of 10 almost as Now What. Hit Boots also as well, not the strongest effort. And for some reason, they decided to record a cover of Road Hard Blues. They wrote house blues even. And for some equally unknown reason, perhaps more perplexing, they stuck it on the end of the fucking album. It's awful. Not only awful, it is pointless. Interestingly, however, had they neglected to put it on the album would have clocked in at 40 minutes. Those of you as old as I am, theoretically even older, will remember the days of vinyl where 40 minutes was seen as about ideal. Yeah, it seems like as technology has developed and you get, a lot of albums clocking in at an hour now, but it's, has the ratio of filler increased? I have no scientific evidence to back this up. But despite being a couple of weaker tracks on here, there's something about that. I just think that something about this 40-minute mark, really, it seems to have worked in the past, and yeah, I'd say there's less temptation or less possibility to fill up space with maybe stuff that doesn't quite. The other one in here, Johnny's Band, the first time I heard it, I thought, Christ, this is awful. Then I saw them play it live, and I thought, oh Christ, this is amazing. It's not the most wonderful composition. It's not up there with Birds of Prey or Surprising, but it's just a bloody good song. And they were off on tour again. By this time, with these two albums behind them and the constant touring they were doing, their profile had really. These albums were selling well. You're getting #1 albums. These albums were #1 in various countries. Now I know being #1 today doesn't equate in sales to being #1 in 1972. I'm fully aware of that, but you can only play the cards you're given. It's still a #1 album. Going Gold, I don't think is 500,000 anymore. It's probably down. I don't know what it is, but physical product does not sell anymore. But they weren't finished. Although the tour they did in support of Infinite was tantalizingly titled the Long Goodbye Tour. Read into that what you will. But how long now? 8 years later. Very long goodbye. So they recorded another one, which in 2020. Whoosh. Possibly the best of the three. Or tomorrow it'll be Now What is the best of the three. But today it might be Whoosh. Interesting things here. These prog influences are still very much there, but there's not the bombast. There's not. When people hear the word prog, you're thinking of 10-minute songs with meandering instrumental passages, listening to the drip of a tap for 20 minutes because it's artistically relevant or something. No, there's not a song here on over 5 minutes 40. One. Am I correct here? Yes. The rest are coming in at 3.5, 4.5 minutes. They're not, we all know they're amongst the best at what they do, and they no longer need to prove that. And everything here is concentrated on the songs. And the results are absolutely amazing. All the way from Throw My Bones to the end of And the Address. Which was a bit, since they re-recorded that from Shades of Deep Purple. It was the opening song on the first Deep Purple album. And one could have, a lot of people did jump to the conclusion that they'd come full circle. Maybe there was Steve Morse was becoming tired of the constant touring, and maybe there were some plans, I don't know, but as we will see, they didn't come to any sort of fruition. But no, this has the proggy influences, this is a rock album, and they're just doing whatever the hell they want. They're not pandering to any audience. I don't think not even their own. They know how to write good songs, and they're okay, we're just going to do what we want. And there's not I need to find another way of saying this. There is not a weak moment on here. There is not a wasted second. Standouts, all of them. Is there anything I don't like? No. Nothing at all. It's just a genius song. It really is. It's just, I've got everything. One of those things, if you wanted one song to encapsulate latter-day Deep Purple with Morse, nothing at all. It has everything. It's just a great album. Another, and commercially, obviously we're talking in relative terms, another great success. Unfortunately, the touring cycle was interrupted by the pandemic and lockdowns and all that other nonsense. And so not much of this made it to the stage. At least not as much as one would have liked. But I think there was just some natural live material here. The Long Way Round is just pure rock and roll, isn't it? I mean, yeah. Not that I must. Okay, any sort of negatives. I don't like Gillan's spoken word interludes on Man Alive particularly, but otherwise it's a great song. Now, when it came to the pandemic, technology being what it is, I can write a guitar part or whatever. Well, even I'm not a musician, but I make my recordings here. I send my video. I send the file halfway around the world almost. Get the images that you're seeing while I'm talking put in there. It gets sent back to me. This is the advantage of technology. So the fact that you couldn't travel or be in the same room as anybody else is no longer a hindrance to creating music. Not an ideal scenario, but it certainly makes it possible. So what did they do? They decided to record a covers album. Question: has any of these bands ever recorded a covers album that's been any good? Can anybody think of one? Because I can't. And this is no exception. I mean, the choices are just so predictable. Do we need another fucking cover of White Room? Does the world need this? Not only were the choices predictable, they did fairly, straightforward renditions of the songs. I mean, I suppose there are two schools of thought. If you're going to cover somebody else's track, just cover it as it is so that everybody recognizes it, or put your own spin on it. I guess the best solution to that dilemma is just not to do it. I mean, they could have released an EP or something of original material. Do people still release EPs? I don't know. They used to. But 5 or 6 songs or something, they could have, original material. They weren't going to tour it anyway, so, they couldn't for obvious reasons. But, so they could have branched out or so, look, I've got this 12-minute idea. What do you think, I don't know, anything. Anything would have been better than this. Doing nothing would have been better than this. Still annoys me. However, it's not the end of the story, is it? Oh, let's get into the end of the Steve Morse era. We all know what happened, the personal tragedy that befell him. He had no choice. He did absolutely what he had to do. He needed time for his family, his wife. And obviously your job, no matter how much you love it, takes second place to that. It's a difficult thing. Some people have said they should have waited for him. Well, I can wait for you, possibly, who knows. If you say, look, I need 6 weeks or 6 months, you can plan around something like that. But when you're waiting for somebody, no. And the band have said, given the age they're at and the stage of the career they're at, that if they'd taken, 6 months to a year off, they may never have, come back. It's an argument. I'm sure they tried their best to find the most equitable solution for all concerned. As far as I'm aware, there are no hard feelings. I hope not. I really, really hope not. So, Deep Purple owe Steve Morse a huge debt of gratitude. So do we all. sad that it ended for him the way it did. He did actually say in an interview that he was not the first guitarist in Deep Purple, but he would like to be the last. And it was an honor that he richly deserved. Wasn't to be. They replaced him with, initially just as a touring guitarist, Simon McBride, who'd worked with Don Airey and Ian Gillan in solo capacities. Obviously the guy can play the guitar. Otherwise, he would not have been working with Gillan and Airey, and they would not have considered him to stand in for Morse. He brings a different style, however. He's very much more rooted in the more traditional blues rock than Morse, whose influences and I think contributions were far more eclectic. It's, yeah. Great player, Simon McBride. But again, not Steve Morse, just as much as Steve Morse was not Ritchie Blackmore. That's not to say that McBride is more Blackmore, but he is more Blackmore than Morse. That makes sense. He obviously, look, he proved himself on, numerous tours. Well, for a year or two at least they were on the road. And they eventually just offered him the job, which he took. Which is great, because he doesn't let the side down musically, but he lowers the average age of the band quite considerably. He's younger than I am. And with Bob Ezrin still in tow, producing the album, we got Equals One, which came out almost a year ago, about 11 months ago. And I've been living with it since then. I know you're going to say it's 11 months, Yuri, it's long enough. And it is, but, if, as I said earlier regarding Abandon, or if you've seen some of my other videos, it's taken me years sometimes to get into stuff, Not that that's the case here. I mean, the first two singles, Portable Door and Pictures of You, very recognizably DP. Could have come from Morse, with Morse in the band. Wasn't the huge difference maybe I was expecting. So, but anyway, whetted my appetite for the album. So what to say about it? Well, again, they followed the pattern I think they established on Whoosh. These songs, yeah. These songs are pretty concise. Again, they're focusing on the track. Perhaps one may have thought that alright, they've got the new guitarist in there, they're going to give him a couple of tracks where, nice 2-minute solo, something like that, But no. Not that he needs it, he shines anyway. He's playing, certainly. To what degree he contributes to the writing, I mean, he obviously does, I don't know. I said the difference is not that dramatic as I thought it might have been. How one interprets that, I don't know. Is it that, let's say, Airey and Glover were far more prominent songwriters than we thought? Or is it just such a seamless marriage of McBride and the band? I don't know. I don't suppose it really matters, does it? All that matters is, do you like it or not? And I do. Again, there is not a bad song here. Anything that I say is a Deep Purple classic? Maybe. Bleeding Obvious. Maybe. Some of the others may grow on me to that degree. I really like Show Me. The opener. That's a really strong opener. They're not playing it live though, are they? Or did they? I can't remember. Yeah. It's varied. It's more varied than Abandon. Not as varied as Now What or Purpendicular in terms of style. There are a couple of what you would probably describe as ballads on here, but not in the love conquers all, pass me a bucket, I'm going to vomit sense of a ballad. They're good songs. They're just chilled, laid back. Lazy Sod's a great song. There's some, I don't know, it's difficult to say. It's more varied than Abandon. Or did they? I can't remember. Yeah. It, it, it's very varied. It's more varied than Abandon. Not as varied as Now What or Purpendicular in terms of style. There are a couple of what you would probably describe as ballads on here, but not in the love conquers all, pass me a bucket, I'm going to vomit sense of a ballad. They're just chilled, laid back. Lazy Sod's a great song. There's some, I don't know, it's difficult to say. For some reason, I was expecting the change to be greater. Now, as we know, at the time of recording this, they are currently recording a follow-up to this. So maybe then we'll see. They will, they've toured together now. They know each other. They've got an album under their belt. Maybe we'll see a difference, something there. I don't know. Difficult to know what to say with this one. Like I said, it's only been with me a year. Well, with everybody for a year. I don't, and say some of these things, well, I've been listening to Deep Purple for over 40 years now. Putting this into the hierarchy, it's going to be very close to the top. As I said, this is just really, really strong record. Ask me again in 2 or 3 years. I'll know better, how to place it in the overall scheme of things. So there you have it. That was the rest of the catalogue, the rest of the incarnations. This stands up to me when we're talking from Purpendicular through to =1. This stands up to me with the best of Mark II. I think as a body of work, it's equal. It's longer. There are more albums. But it's every bit the equal of the Mark II catalogue. Which means, if you watch my other videos, that it's vastly superior to Marks 1, 3, 4, and 5. I can only recommend this for anybody not familiar with the Morse and the McBride era. Do yourself a favor. Listen to it. This is not... People have complained, they used to, and probably still do, they haven't written a song like Highway Star. Yes, they have. They wrote it in 1971. They called it Highway Star. They're not about repeating themselves. They're trying new stuff. This is creative music. And, I mean, God, how long have they been going now? 57, 58 years, something? And they're still able to produce stuff like this. Hats off at the very least. It's an amazing achievement. And as I said, this stands up with anything that Mark II ever did. It will never have the impact that Mark II did. Because Mark II is remembered because it was successful at the time it was successful. Maybe 10 years before or after, it would not have had that impact. Luck is involved, as is with most things in life. But if, on the other hand, if you start this catalogue with Purpendicular, if a band starting out had that run of albums that we're talking about, yes, they would have had every chance of success. In the 70s, the 80s, and even today, I think the quality of music is that good. And we know fashions come and go, but there are still people out there. I know we're dying off. But there are still people out there who don't follow fashion and appreciate quality. So there you have it. That is now the 4th video on Deep Purple. Yeah, well, that's it. I've been through everything. I did promise a ranking video. Yes, I will do that. I will do that soon. And at some point, I would like to take a look at the development of their live shows. Or perhaps a lack of development in their live shows over their entire career. But that's quite an involved project. Anyway, we'll see what happens. So I say one more time, спасибо большое, Leo, who does the graphics for me. And yeah, until next time, I thank you for your indulgence. I wish you well. Yeah. Machonkier.